Good morning and welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha and I'm your host. And I'm really excited about today's verses, actually. I want to start by asking you to think about a time when you felt judged or looked down upon. Maybe it was because of the way that you looked, or where you're from, or a choice that you made that others didn't understand. Maybe it was a time you were excluded or made to feel less than, a time when someone's prejudice or discrimination really stung. I know I've been there in my personal life or work. I remember a work example. I was an engineer and I was giving a tour of the facilities to some like higher ups that were visiting. And one of the managers that I worked with, as we were giving the tour, I remember he looked at the guests that were there, and he's like, "I know she doesn't look like an engineer, does she?" And I remember just going back to my desk and like crying. Some of these just like prejudices that people take at a superficial level. They look at you, and because of the way that you look, or your gender or your ethnicity, they just automatically make assumptions about you, and it's really painful. These experiences they leave us feeling small or isolated and sometimes angry. Remember, I was angry. And then it's easy to feel like we're defined by these moments, right? Like they shape who we are. But today's verses are going to give us some hope. Today's verses are going to give us ways to rise above these judgments, to look at beyond what separates us, and instead see the divine in every person, no matter where they come from, what they believe, or how they look. So today we're going to explore a teaching from the Gita that might just change how we view ourselves and everyone around us. It's about developing that spiritual vision, seeing beyond the surface, beyond the labels, the judgments, and recognizing the soul within every living being. And it's easy to hear these things and say, "Oh, yeah, I do that. I do that." And no, I don't take these things to heart when I feel judged. But the reality is that a lot of this even happens to us sometimes on a subconscious level. Us judging other people or us feeling judged by other people, even though we know these things, we know that we're all spirit souls and that, we're beyond bodily identifications. We still can't help but feel hurt when we feel judged, and sometimes even catch ourselves judging others. So that's what we're going to kind of zoom into today. We're going to talk about developing a spiritual vision that sees beyond the surface, beyond the labels, beyond the judgments, and recognizes the soul. And this could be really paradigm shifting if we could really imbibe it. And we imbibe these things by talking about them, by contemplating them, by associating with people that are also trying to live these things. So that's what we're going to do today. When we can start to see through this lens of love and compassion instead of prejudice and discrimination, it could be a total game changer in our lives. So we're going to start with 518. I think we're just going to do two verses today. This 518 is a really big verse, and it's a popular one too. So does somebody want to volunteer to read? Stella, do you want to read for us today? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Okay, great. I'll go ahead and share the
Um,
screen. And it's 518.
the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, or an outcast.
Beautiful. Thank you. So this is the verse right here. This is the verse that talks about this equal vision. Before we go into this verse, I want to just kind of review where we've been in this chapter so far and what led us here. So if you remember the first section of chapter 5, we talked about how karma yoga is the same as, but easier than yan yoga. Yan yoga being the yoga of knowledge. So people that renounce, go out to the forest, contemplate, come to the conclusion that spirit is what's real, and kind of detach themselves from matter. They're saying the path of karma yoga, which is actively engaging in the world but detaching from the results. They're saying that those paths are the same and that they lead to the same goal, but karma yoga is easier. And then in 7 through 16, we talked about how fixing the mind on the soul keeps the karma yogi free from bondage. And then in the last class, we started to transition to the conception of the Paramatma, which is God in the heart. And we talked about how fixing the mind on the Paramatma can free a karma yoga from bondage. And then in the very last class, in the 17th verse, we talked about the four faculties that of our subtle setup. So our intelligence, our mind, our faith, and then our ultimate goal. We talked about how those are like four lanes of consciousness, and they all have to be going in the same direction to attain this platform of spiritual knowledge. So here, that brings us to this verse 18. He's saying, if we center everything on God, we can develop this equal vision for all living beings. So this is like the result of doing that. If we could focus our intelligence on spirit, if we could focus our mind, engage our emotional faculties, if we could have faith in the process, and if we can make that our ultimate goal, if we could zip all of these up, we can develop this equal vision for all living beings. And this is a really beautiful thing. And in the verse after this, Krishna is going to talk about the result of the equal vision. So just to kind of zoom in on this verse a little bit, in this verse, he says, a learned person sees with equal vision a brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, which are all very different things. A brahmana in Vedic culture is like the highest of the varnas. You know, they're learned, they're humble, they're the teachers of society. They're the highest. And then the animal species that are listed in this verse, the cow, the elephant, the dog, this refers respectively to the modes of material nature. Remember, we talked about the modes: sattva, the mode of goodness, then the mode of passion, and then the mode of ignorance. Why do I always do it backwards when so goodness is the highest, passion is the middle, and then I don't know why I do this. So these animals refer to this, to these modes. And what it's saying here is that, and then the dog eater is like below, even, the lowest of below. So what it's saying here is these are all very different, or very different in terms of varnas, very different in terms of how they're influenced by the modes of nature, because we know that bodies are material productions of different modes. So that's what bodies are. So this is, again, just to demonstrate just a whole spectrum. It's a wide net that it casts out there with this description. And so it's saying here that they're all very different, but a learned person sees them equally. So it's like a row of light bulbs of all different shapes and colors, but the electricity flowing through them is the same. The outer casing is different, but the power source is the same. So it's saying here, whatever situation someone is in the three modes, we should see them equally because it's just their outer casing. We should see diversity externally, but internally see their similarity. And their similarity is that every living entity has a soul, an individual soul, and with that soul, next to that soul, is the super soul, God within the heart. So every living entity has a soul and super soul within the body. And though the soul and the super soul are of the same spiritual quality. So at our essence, what we are is the soul. And the soul is a spiritual quality in that it's such ananda. It's eternal, it's full of knowledge, it's full of bliss. So the soul is not material, the soul is spiritual. The body is material. And once we learn to identify with what is real, what our eternal essence is, which is this spiritual soul, we'll see that same commonality in all living beings. So true knowledge refers not only to knowing the differences, excuse me, between matter and spirit, but to knowing the super soul. And that's what we talked about in the last episode, kind of making that change, that level up from just knowing that, hey, I'm a soul, I'm not the body, and therefore I'm going to act in line with the soul. But the next level up is knowing that God exists inside our heart. God exists inside of our heart. And that's true knowledge. God exists inside of our heart and inside of all living beings' heart. And a wise person understands that God who lives in everyone's heart allows each of us to follow our own desires, no matter what our current situation is, without playing favorites. So this is the wide vision that we know, we come here, we hear this, but to know this and to really realize it, to really imbibe it. And then once we do that, how that plays out in our world, in our lives. Because in today's world, equality is among the most cherished values, right? Equality is so important. Everybody wants to feel equal, and it's such a topic of social things, of politics. Discrimination is incredibly provoking. And this outrage, it's healthy as it helps to create a world where everyone has equal opportunities, which we know is important. Just like the importance of equality in something in modern movements like Black Lives Matter, right? Or the push for gender equality. This outrage and passion for justice stems from the understanding that every individual, regardless of their background, is worthy of equal dignity and respect. So spiritual vision works similarly. It asks us to transcend the material layers and see this core spirit in everyone. Because materialism tells us that people are different, not equal. Tells us that people are different, not equal. The spiritual worldview, that we're all souls who are essentially similar in our core characteristics of what we talked about, eternality, consciousness, and joy, and that we're all parts of the divine. This is the great equalizer. And those who understand this truth see all living beings equally. They can acknowledge the variety of living beings at the material level, but they focus on seeing beyond that variety to their essential equality. And this is the most inclusive sense of equality. We talked about this back in chapter 2, how we all have this need, we all have this desire inside of us, this to be equal, to feel equal. And this spirituality, this symptom of the soul, is the great equalizer, and that we all have a soul. God exists inside all of us, and in that way, we're all of the same quantity. So, Krishna is saying in this verse that we may have different roles in society, like being a teacher, a parent, a student, a worker, and that's okay. These differences should help us stay focused and to do our part well, to contribute to society, well, to contribute to the higher society, and to be engaged in something that's conducive to our natures. So we talked about this too in the past chapters. It's not about judging what role's better, but making sure that everyone is contributing in a way that suits them best. And that's best internally for the individual and also externally for society at large. So while we need to acknowledge natural differences among people, what's more important is to recognize their connection with God. And this is what can help us to rise above discriminative vision. Because one who truly loves God loves everyone whom God loves. One who truly loves God loves everyone whom God loves. And we see this on a material platform. I've talked about this before too, like my best friend's kids, who I don't really know that well or have that much in common, but I have a special place in my heart for them because I love her and they're a part of her. And this same vision can be extended. When we develop love for God, we love all of God's children because they're part of Him. And this is spiritual vision. God-loving persons extend their love to everyone and everything connected to God. And since everything is connected to God, real spiritualists are those who hold no prejudice or discrimination towards anyone or anything. So they hate none and they treat everyone with love and kindness without any other consideration. Because God doesn't hate anyone, so then how can a lover of God hate anyone? Before I move on, does anybody want to share anything? Anything that's coming up for you or resonating? Okay, I'll go on then. So this spiritual vision promotes love and kindness while material vision supports prejudice and discrimination. Spiritual vision promotes love and kindness, while material vision supports prejudice and discrimination. So we've all, walked down a street before and seen a person, a homeless person. Maybe they're in tattered clothes or talking to themselves. Our material mind might immediately label them as crazy or homeless, or you may instinctively avoid them or feel uncomfortable. But spiritual vision reminds us that beneath those worn clothes and troubled behavior is a soul, just like us, just like you and me, struggling, hurting, and is loved by God. And with that vision, your reaction may shift from judgment to compassion. And maybe instead of even walking past, you offer a kind smile or prayer or even a sandwich. And that's the difference. The material vision sees division. Spiritual vision sees connection. And this actually just happened to my husband and I. Every Thursday night we go to Kirtan. And as we're driving there, we stop at this intersection and there's homeless people that are like trying to collect money. And every time, we pull up, we have to stop at this intersection. I'll be honest, I feel a little bit uncomfortable. I try not to make eye contact. And my husband last week was like, we should start bringing them a sandwich. And I was like, that's a great idea. We should start bringing them a sandwich. So we'll naturally notice ourselves going into this material vision. And in that, that's kind of our cue. Now we're hearing these things, we're able to identify when that's happening to us, when we can kind of shift to a spiritual vision, to having this compassion for this spirit soul and trying to love them in that, trying to share a little bit of that love. I mean, we can't like put ourselves at risk or anything like that, but in our heart of hearts, we should feel this love and compassion when we see them. Or when we see suffering, this is what we should feel. Where a lot of times when we see suffering, our material vision, sometimes we're happy at other people's pain. Anybody ever feel that? It gives you some kind of satisfaction because that, that they have a greater pain than you. It's kind of this terrible thing, but this is material vision, and it happens to all of us. So it's shifting this and to feeling their pain as our own. Like we would if it were our child. We'd never feel happy for our child's pain or our child's suffering. And this is at different levels, we obviously wouldn't feel, but it's just like somebody that's, a very small level of pain that somebody goes through where they, we feel like, oh, they deserved it. Or, where can we shift that to feel more love and compassion? And this isn't just for humans, this extends to animals too, because animals are spiritual beings in a material body. Just like humans, they're cherished children of God who loves them all equally. So again, for a spiritualist, this spiritual equality becomes the focal point. It helps us to understand that everyone's a spirit soul and a fragmental part of God. And this is the vision that brings about compassion. And as we start to notice the divine connection we have with every living entity around us, our vision deepens. We start seeing that everyone is dealing with hunger, pleasure, pain, love, and various other emotions that show up almost everywhere. And again, just like if we're used to being happy for somebody else's pain or misfortune, we start to feel that as our own. We don't rejoice at other people's hardships because, we're not rejoicing at other people's hardships because we're bad people. It's because we're conditioned to compare ourselves and tie our self-worth to being better than others in some way. So it's not that, we're just these terrible people, but it's our conditioning that's taught us that our self-worth comes from being better than others. And in that way, we're in this constant state of comparison. Oh, great. I'll call it. Just one second, Stacey. Let me finish this, and then I'd love to hear from you. So material vision, as the Gita puts it, feeds this mindset, this competitive mindset, seeing people as rivals, not as fellow souls. But spiritual vision helps us move past this. When we really can see others as part of the same divine family, their pain becomes our pain, and their success becomes our joy. And we'll see the difference that we feel. When we can feel compassion for other people's pain and misfortune, instead of feeling like, oh well, okay, that puts me on top. You just feel happier. When we're giving more love and compassion, it's what we're filled with. When we're giving judgment and comparison, that's what we're filled with. And it's ick. It's like being filled with mud. It's yucky. So Stacy, please enlighten us.
I don't know if I can enlighten you, but what I can say is I'm reading also from Canto 9, the end of Canto 9 in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it talks about I don't know exactly which what verse it is, but it's the end of Canto 9. It talks about envy, and envy just brings about hate in the heart, and that constant envy can continue to it kind of grows like a mold throughout you. And that envy, so when you have that envy, similar to what you're talking about, you have that horrible wishing for other people because you're envious of them. And then that brings about the same things that you're talking about. And you don't maybe even realize it. At first you're like, oh wow, they really know a lot. And then you're like, wow, they know so much more than me. And then you're like, this envy comes out, and all of a sudden you have this hate in your heart. And then if you talk to someone about it, then you both have this hate and it grows really big. And you have to, like, I have to check myself. So it's very similar to what you're talking about, but it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly it. And these examples are actually like all across the Bhagavatam of this very dangerous thing that you're talking about, this envy. And it creeps up on us, just like you're saying. We can start by, maybe really appreciating somebody. And then as time goes on, we feel like, I want what they have. Why am I not more like that? Why are they getting all that love and attention and I'm not? And before we know it, it could just turn into this yucky thing that we have to clean out. And I love that we all have it too. It happens to all of us, in different circumstances and in different things. And yeah, we know when we can be somebody's genuine well-wisher, we know that envy's been cleaned out. When we genuinely want the best for them, and we're sad if that doesn't happen. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Andrew says on the chat, oh, he asked me to repeat this line. This line of spiritual vision promotes love and kindness, while material vision supports prejudice and discrimination. So spiritual vision promotes love and kindness, while material vision supports prejudice and discrimination. Because the material game is this, this rat race of who's better than whom and who's back on top. That's material vision. Spiritual vision is we're all children of God. We're all spirit souls. And in that, we naturally, it's connecting. We feel connected to each other in that common source, in that common connection to source. So when we can see everyone as spiritually equal, we stop labeling people based off external factors like nationality, ethnicity, race, religion. We begin to look beyond the surface and recognize something deeper, the soul. And at the same time, spiritual vision doesn't mean that we ignore people's physical, emotional behavior or ethical differences. Equal vision doesn't mean treating everyone the same way. It means treating everyone with the same respect while responding appropriately to their unique situations. Equal vision doesn't mean treating everyone the same. It means treating everyone with the same respect while responding appropriately to their unique situations. So, for example, you wouldn't treat a 5-year-old the same way that you'd treat a 10-year-old. But what stays constant is the love behind our actions. That's the foundation of spiritual engagement. So we still may have to address difficult situations, but we do it in a place of love and respect, not a place of resentment and I want to put you down. Right? We wouldn't hug a tiger just because we're practicing equality. It doesn't mean equality doesn't mean throwing away common sense. Just like a doctor gives each patient individual care based on their condition, we also need to discern what kind of response or interaction is appropriate with each person. But again, at the core is love. Again, when we have to deal with something difficult, a difficult colleague or a difficult relationship, we should take some time and really think how we can approach this situation with love. First, make sure that's our intention. What's our intention behind it? Maybe it's a relationship that we have that has to be different. There has to be some kind of like functionality shift. So we know that that's going to be difficult for the other person to take. So how can we approach that in a way where we're staying in a place of love and compassion, but at the same time, we have to address a functional relationship to invoke change. So that's what it's really about, where we're situated at our core in our intentions. Is that a place of love and compassion? Or is that a place of comparison and resentment? And if it's comparison and resentment, then we really got to take a couple steps back and take some time, maybe pray, maybe engage in some spiritual practices, hang out with some uplifting people, talk to some uplifting, to people that inspire you about it and how you can handle it. Because sometimes if we're plagued with that resentment or that comparison mentality, even if we want to, act better, even if we want to rise above, it leaks out of us. That can happen, like if you ever go home for Thanksgiving and you really want to show up at a certain level, but you get caught right back in those old dynamics and before you know it, it's like just leaking out of you, this resentment and this ick. So we really have to take the time, like Stacy's saying, to clean out our hearts and even to seek guidance, from others that are maybe not so emotionally involved and are maybe wise and also very connected and can give us some good advice. I always lean on my husband for this because I have a tendency to get very emotionally involved and he doesn't. So he can stay very objective and he could see when I'm acting out of lower frequencies of myself. And he can tell me that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that means I need to take a step back, need to do some cleaning, and then maybe approach the situation when I'm at a place where I'm full of love and compassion. So that's what's oozing out of me. Stacy says my husband too. Yeah, so grateful for good husbands, right? I know Kapana has a good husband too. So this is why discrimination between right and wrong, morality and immorality still matters. If someone does good, we appreciate them. If they do something harmful, we may have to call it out, no matter who they are. A loving mother does this all the time. She like this is the perfect example, is a mother, because she's going to have to discipline her children. She may have to have some tough conversations, but at her core, she never stops loving them. And what she's doing is out of love. And sometimes, I haven't got to this stage yet in motherhood, but my understanding is that sometimes, a mother even has to check herself because she's maybe triggered by past situations or conditioning that shows up with her children. And in that, it's the same thing. We have to kind of identify when we're starting to act with our material mind and bring it back. And we can all feel that because we know what it feels like when we feel loved and connected. And when we feel loved and connected, then we're going to act from that place. But when we forget that we're loved and connected and we're connected to source, the most powerful source of love and connection, when we forget that, then we start acting out of our lower frequencies. So Arjuna had to do this. He had to fight against his relatives, and he had so much love and respect for them. So he was fighting with his relatives not out of hatred, but out of his duty to protect society. And even in this battle, he never lost his love or respect for them. But he still had to show up and do his duty. So true equal vision means responding to people according to their needs and intentions, not based on our own preferences or superficial differences. So it's about expanding our hearts beyond bias, but not becoming blind to practical realities. So that's kind of the fine line there. Does anybody want to share anything before I continue?
Yes, Radha. Hi, Radha.
Hi. Yes,
Hi,
Sukdai.
Sukdai. Yeah, I saw, I can relate to what Stella was saying about envy that would lead to anger and sometimes hatred. And I mean, this happened, and I'm surprised it popped up at this time, even though it happened over 20 years ago. Um, Job-wise, was moving back from Florida to New York, and I was joining Mount Sinai. And after 1 year in the system, they offer me the chief position for the midwives. And so, not knowing that there are a few midwives who wanted that position over the years and they were never offered it. So they were so envious for me getting that position, coming to Mount Sinai without a master's degree. And they were all from like Columbia and NYU with their masters. But I was third world trained, so I was not, I was British trained, and it was all diploma. So I didn't have their qualification, but my experience, my knowledge was probably um, recognized by the chief of OB and offer me that position. So when I accepted it after the second year of them repeating the offer, I had two of the midwives call the director to say that I didn't deserve that position
Oh.
and that they deserve that position. So the director came to me and told me, and he said to me, "Don't you worry about them. That's coming from within their self, that they're envious, and that's their own feeling coming out. Don't worry about it." And so, but whatever happened, it just kind of, I mean, for me to think of it like 20 years after, or more than 20 years, it probably did affected me some way, because I went back not only to do my degrees, my bachelor, midwifery, and master's, and everything. It motivated me to go back to do all of that. And
Wow.
so when I was finished, I'm like, oh my God, what are they talking about? This is like nothing, it's like, I mean, um, this is what they're talking about themselves. Oh my gosh. But I mean, at the time, I didn't have that understanding or a support person to speak to say, okay, you're equally so and whatever. My chief, my boss supported me, but you can't go to him every day. However, I continue to do my job and continue to be their best friend, but I always have a way of balancing thing. And in my sense, I was saying, you know, maybe maybe they feel that way because it's not fair that I just went into their group and was offered this, and they've been there for so long. They should have got the offer. And so I compromised that way and I continued to do what I did. And I held that position till for about 16 years. And so became their friend eventually. But yeah, but it does, affect you in that sense. But in no way I was prejudiced, even though I am in this country over 40 something years. I never experienced prejudice in a skin color way, I have to say. And
Wow.
yeah, so
Very fortunate.
I like to share that with envy, of course, a lot comes out. Hatred, jealousy, all of that comes out, which
Hmm.
I saw over the years from a lot of people. So I like to just put that in, you know. Thank
Wow.
you for
And
listening.
thank you. Thank you. And just how hurtful that can be. I mean, your story, the fact that I mean, it's something that you probably will remember forever. And that and that drove you to, go out and get that degree, or, so that you could feel, so that, you would be equal or feel equal in their eyes. Envy
Right.
is so hurtful.
Yeah.
I think when what I've done in the past is when I felt like people are envious of me, like minimized myself to make them feel better. That's like what I've done. And that is like it's not good for anybody. It's not good for yourself and your connections, but it's just so damaging because we want so badly to be connected, to feel loved and accepted. And when we don't feel that, it's crushing. So when we next time we feel envious of others, we should remember that, how even we feel when others are envious of us. And the other thing to remember, this is the point I love about envy, is that if we really accepted karma and how it works, that the people's lives and the way the modes that people are influenced by, it's all a result of their past karma. Just like the same for us, the job that we get, the children that we have, the family whatever it is, it's a result of our karma. And we have to accept that. We have to accept ours, we have to accept others. And in that way, there's not even any room for envy. They're experiencing their karma. We're experiencing our karma. We're in these parallel lanes going through life, but we each have our own karma. And so in that way, it's like envy doesn't even really make any sense. And I also love that you said that you got to a place where you could have some compassion for their envy. That's like the ultimate, somebody who's envious of you, to be able to have to understand where that's coming from, and have compassion for that. That's like our North Star where we really want to get. Because we know it, when a person's feeling envious, they're suffering. They're suffering because they're under this illusion, right? That they are less than because they're not whatever it is that's in front of them, because they're not identifying with their real identity, with their real true self. So we should have compassion for that, and that should be an impetus for us to connect more with our true selves, so that we never become such a victim of envy that it shatters us, and two, so that we're not projecting it onto other people because it's painful for everybody involved.
Can I share something?
Yeah, is this Stella?
No, it's Stacy.
Stacy. Yes,
Yeah.
Stacy.
I'm just gonna make it short, but I want to call myself out for having envy, and it does eat my heart away when I do have it. But it's just like you said, it's a lack of feeling good enough and feeling like I'm smart. I know things, like, because I never feel like, oh, I don't like that person because they know things. But when I feel less than and not good enough, and like I want to know more, and I see people that will say, oh, from chapter one from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm like, and then that envy comes out, and I don't want it to. I don't mean it to, but it does. And when Prabhupada writes about envy, because Stubit said this, when he writes about envy, he really means hate.
Mm.
And so it's like I don't want that in my heart. So I guess for the people that it happens to, just know there are people like me that are back ending my whole life with as much scripture as I can to rid that horrible, uh, like, what's it called? Like they called it
Anartha.
fermenting in my
Mm.
heart, that anarta. Yes, I'm doing all that I can to get rid of it. So maybe just look at it from like someone like me who doesn't want it to happen, but really working so hard to get rid of it. So trying to have
Wow.
compassion.
Yeah, thank you for that vulnerability, Stacy. And know that it's something that we all experience. And if we think that we don't, then we're probably just not very attuned to it, because on some level we all experience it, because we get misidentified, we get captivated by these material identifications, and in that we become obsessed with comparisons. And your vulnerability and your heart really shines through with all of your shares, and we really appreciate you, Stacey. Thank you. Katie, do you want to share with us?
Hi, thank you. Yes. I was thinking about how much confusion envy brings to me. Um, and I have a couple of examples. And it was just making me think about
Oh, wait, your service is not great.
class.
Wait, your service is not great. Katie? Katie? Oh, Katie, we can't hear you, my friend.
Darkness at night in front of the sun
Katie?
that's coming up are always there, you know. Can you hear
Katie,
me?
can you
Can you
hear
hear me now?
me? Okay, that's better, but you're gonna have to start
Sorry.
over. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Is that better?
Yes, that's
I'm
better.
sorry. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
I was thinking about how much confusion envy brings. Confusion.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And as compared to our last class or recent class on like the clarity of coming out of the dark night of camping and then realizing, like the sun rise is coming back and clouds are just
Yeah.
covering the sun and those kind of examples. Yeah, and how so for example, like the director, the founder of the museum, like I,
You're going out again,
I
hon.
have a lot of
Katie,
anger and hatred and envy of her, to be completely honest. Uh-oh.
the
Sorry.
director
Can you
of
hear
the
me
place
now?
that you work. Yeah, the
Oh
director of
no,
the
maybe
place
not.
that you work, you have a lot of hatred
Yeah,
and anger. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's interesting to realize how I think a lot of that comes from envy. But the confusion part is that I don't want her job and I
You don't want
don't
her job.
want her life and her exorbitant money and opulence, like and so I think that confusion is notable because envy, it's like, wait a minute, why am I having this envy when I don't even want that? I don't want that distance from Krishna. Like I don't want those material things. And then
So
another kind of
what do you
funny
think it is
example
that you what
would
do you think it is that you want? Because there's obviously something there, or you would just, have compassion for her, right?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what gets me the most is just like we're talking about the inequality, the unfairness, and the
Mm,
facade of saying like we are fair to all while really being very hoarding, like grasping and holding rather than sharing, and just being so
mm.
false and fake about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hypocrisy.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to analyze like what I'm really upset about. And then, but it's another kind of like a little kind of funny example of confusion is when I might have shared this story a few months ago, but when my older siblings are all adopted, and then I'm like born from our parents. But when I was really little, I remember my being like what not understanding like where kids come from, being like 3 4 years old, 5 years old, and I would walk around going, why was I born? Why was I born? And what I meant was, why wasn't I picked up at Catholic Charities like everyone else? Like, why am I? And
Mm,
they were envious of me being the natural born child, and I was confused and envious of like being different. um
right.
yeah, and so it's just, I don't know, it's just really interesting that to think about the roots of these thoughts and like realize this envy is not it's not serving me, it's not getting me something I actually want. I think
Right.
that's really it. Thank you, sorry about the
Yeah, no.
driving and connection.
No,
Thanks.
that's so perfect because what we all really want is this love and connection. And that's available for us from God, from our ultimate source. That's the reservoir. That's where we need to plug into. And once we can plug into that and we experience that love and connection, then we can share it with everybody else, everybody around us, and it has that ripple effect. And that's the ultimate, but it's not by brushing up against everybody else and trying to one up them. We're trying to, but you're right. We get confused. We think that it is, and we get confused. Thank you. Stella, did you have something that you wanted to share with us before we move on?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, just on a silly just to bring it down from all the high stuff is that sometimes I tell my little kitty, Krishna's in your heart, like it helps me remember she's got the soul just like us, but it's in a cat body. And sometimes I envy her being allowed to sleep around the house all day while I'm at work. But she's got her cat body, that's her karma right now. So, but I mean, when you live with a pet, you know that they're a soul. They're an individual soul. But anyway,
Yeah.
I it's not a very high level stuff, but I do remind her that Krishna's in her heart, and Krishna I tell her that Krishna loves her very much.
Mm.
So, and I pray for her to have a human body and be with the devotees.
Aw, it's
So,
beautiful. Thank you. It's very sweet. I think the same thing about my dogs sometimes. It's just lay around, do nothing.
yeah.
What is this? Yeah. So that brings us to kind of our next point here is that diversity brings life to society. It drives away, I mean, it adds color, it adds richness, flavor to our experience. It drives away like monotony, the same thing. A healthy society, it's not made up of identical people. It thrives by embracing individuals from different backgrounds with different talents, skills, ways of thinking. Just like a symphony, like every instrument. If every instrument played the same note, it would be dull. But when the violin, the flute, the drums, the trumpet, they each play their own harmony, it becomes music. So the beauty lies in the differences brought together by a common rhythm and purpose. Same with like a sports team. Each player has a different role and unique strength. And it's precisely their diversity of roles that makes the team successful because they're all working towards a shared goal. And this is the same with society. We need all different types, all different positions to come together. But the important thing is they come together and they're working towards that shared goal. And that shared goal can sometimes even make the superficial things like not even a thing. People don't even notice or care about the superficial things because they're so connected around the same goal. So spiritually, we're all children of the same divine source. And our material differences like race, background, personality, talents, they're not threats to spiritual unity. When we see them with spiritual vision and engage them in service to God, they reflect the variety and richness of God's creation. And it's like even that, no matter how big or small your service is, again, God sees your heart. And what's that story that story about the little squirrel that that's what's I'm forgetting the details of the story. Like
Something about
they,
my arm.
yeah, who's sharing this?
Yeah.
Mariah.
Yeah.
Can you
Sorry.
share this story?
Yeah. So I read it to Luna because I have it in a little kid version, and basically, like Hanuman and his associates, his race, they're coming along and they're trying to build the stone bridge from to Sri Lanka to go and capture Ravana, and the monkeys are giant. And so they're carrying these giant stones that really build the bridge. And then this little squirrel is picking up tiny little pebbles, squirrel sized pebbles, but he's adding it. And at first, Hanuman's like, "What are you doing? You're wasting your time. Get out of here." But then Ram comes along and he's like, he's doing this with love and devotion, and I accept it. And he shows him like every little bit counts, even if you're a tiny little squirrel adding a little squirrel pebble to the bridge, you're still helping build that bridge.
Yeah.
And it's the love and the devotion in his heart. That's like a very simplified version of it, but it's his love and his devotion in his heart. It's not about the size that he can do it. He's doing what he can with the body he has.
Yes, exactly. We do what we can with the body that we have, and the love and intention and devotion around it is what God sees. Our material mind likes to think that I have to do something really big, so that I'm loved and approved and accepted. But no, it's just your intention. Purify that intention That's just as big. Your service is just as big as, the monkeys that are building the bridge. Even if you're just bringing over pebbles. So
And
this,
there's one little thing on that squirrel story.
yeah.
So Ramji picks up that squirrel and with his 3 fingers he pats the squirrel. So in India, if you see, the squirrel has three lines, and here you see the squirrels don't have that 3 line.
Aw, sweet from being pat by Ram.
Yes, pat by Ramji. Yes.
So sweet. Such a sweet story. Yeah. If you're ever feeling less than or what you're doing isn't enough, think of this squirrel. And he was even pat by Ram. That's beautiful. Yeah. And that's where this real beauty comes from. It comes from when our differences serve a common purpose, love and devotion to God. That's the real beauty. The diversity, the unity in diversity, unity in that there's a common purpose, diversity and there's different ways that we contribute to that common goal, that common purpose, and also different, levels. And we can't get stuck on those things because if we get stuck on those things, they divert us from the actual common purpose. Just like a sports team, if they're caught up in judging each other superficially, they're going to be much less successful when they're working towards that common goal. And things like, and that's why people can become super united over a goal like that. The team becomes like best friends, like brothers. And this is what God encourages us to do. We have this common mission and we help each other with it. We're happy for each other because we always keep that common mission forefront. And we think that we hear this, and again, we think it's easy, but people that are very advanced easily forget this in their service. And I have seen it time and time again. And it's like heartbreaking. At first it becomes like, oh, let's all get together, let's serve, we have a common purpose. But over time it becomes like, oh, you got more attention than me, or your people are liking you more than me, or you're making more money than me, or, and it's divisive. So it takes a lot of work and fortitude in your own personal practice to keep yourself from venturing over into that material way of thinking. So when we're guided by a higher purpose, when we're really grounded in it, we're doing the internal work ourselves. Those differences, they don't divide us. They elevate us. And this is how a real team can become average to just just killing it, crushing it. When people can really come together and support each other in their differences and lift each other up, the team's potential is like infinite. So this common purpose is so important. And this is where spirituality, and especially the spreading of God consciousness, has the power to truly save the world. Sometimes I get disheartened by all the politics, laws, regulations that are needed just to stop people from hurting themselves or each other. It feels sometimes like we're constantly managing these symptoms instead of addressing the root cause. But the truth is, if we could raise our collective consciousness, if more people could develop spiritual vision, we wouldn't even need so many of these laws. People would just naturally wouldn't want to harm, exploit, or discriminate against others because they'd see the soul in everyone and they'd act accordingly. And this is the power of true spiritual transformation. If each of us lived by a code of ethics rooted in spiritual understanding, where the common goal is to serve God and others with compassion, just imagine how much less conflict, inequality, injustice there would be. We wouldn't need all these external rules to tell us what's right. Our hearts would guide us towards this kindness, this respect, responsibility. And of course, laws and policies are needed, especially to protect people. But we should understand that it's not the ultimate solution. Sometimes even these solutions, they just create more problems when we're only treating the symptoms and we haven't addressed the cause. And that's why investing in the spiritual growth, our own and others, is so important. Because by cultivating and spreading this spiritual knowledge, we're not only solving problems now, but helping them from resurfacing in the future. And that's what happens when we live from this place of spiritual vision. We naturally become more appreciative and compassionate. We develop a genuine well-wishing attitude towards everyone. Yeah, I heard this story once of a man who brought 2 lunch boxes to work, one for himself and one for a homeless man near his office. And he said, if I'm eating, how can I not think of him? That's spiritual vision in action, seeing the suffering of others as part of our own experience. And living from this place of spiritual vision or spiritual awareness fills our hearts with joy and satisfaction. So the spirituality, it doesn't promote indifference or violence towards others. Instead, it encourages love and compassion for all, rooted in our love for God. And as we live with this vision, we begin to feel for others. We recognize their unhappiness as our own. And this shift in perception, it creates a ripple effect. Others are inspired by our actions, and then they too begin to feel more connected and compassionate. You know, there's this country song I used to listen to when I was a kid. I used to listen to a lot of country music. I grew up in Missouri. It was like, that was it. And there's a song, this really nice song. It was called The Chain of Love by Clay Walker. Have any of you heard of this? It's a really beautiful song. It tells a story of how one act of kindness can just ripple through a whole community. It starts with a man named Joe who leaves a large tip for a waitress. And when she asks what she can do for him back, he says, "You don't owe me anything. You know, I've been there too. Someone helped me out the same way I'm helping you." He tells her to pay it forward. And so later, the woman who received her kindness, Joe's kindness, is inspired. So she pays it forward by helping someone else in need. I think she leaves a big tip for a waitress who's really pregnant and struggling. And the beautiful twist of the whole song is when she had left the tip for the pregnant waitress, and that waitress is Joe's wife. And Joe is who helped, the lady change her tire. So it's just this beautiful story of like how just a kind act could just create a ripple effect, and such that, it comes right back around. And that's the kind of society that we try to create here. The story, it illustrates the power of empathy and compassion and this ripple effect, and how helping others, not out of obligation or even like trying to make a show, but out of a genuine desire to make someone's day a little bit better. That embodies this principle of spiritual vision. It's about seeing the suffering of others as our own, right, as part of our own experience, and responding with love and kindness and compassion. And these acts, these can be so small, right? But the ripple effect can be profound. And this is how we create a society where every living being is loved and cared for. And this true empathy, it transforms us into genuine well-wishers. And this is what makes a lasting positive impact on the world around us. And the teachings of the Gita, they guide us towards this unification. And not just human beings, but among all living beings. And this happens through spiritual vision. When we realize that we're all souls, we're all connected to God, we see that we're all a part of one big family, just like my material family, that I would always be a well-wisher of, and I would always treat with love and compassion, or want to anyway, We need to extend that out to our spiritual family and understand that this truth can significantly reduce conflict in the world. And the more that we can internalize this wisdom and share it with others, the more this vision will manifest in the world. And this is what will help us move towards greater equality, peace, and harmony. So as we wrap up today, I want us all to reflect on this, how seeing the world through spiritual vision has the power to transform not just our personal lives, but society as a whole. When we can rise above the superficial differences that divide us, whether it's race, background, status, can rise above these, and we can see the soul within each person. We can begin to unlock a profound sense of unity and love. And this spiritual vision, it is described in the Gita. It's not just an ideal, it's a practice. It's a practice by focusing on the divine, seeing all living beings as a part of a greater whole, and recognizing that each of us is a soul on a shared journey. We can create a world where empathy, kindness, and compassion flourish. When we can embrace this vision, we'll start to treat each other with the same respect and love that we would want for ourselves, regardless of external circumstances. And we stop seeing people through the lens of judgment, this material vision. We see them with the spark of divinity in everyone. So as we move forward, let's commit to developing this vision. Let's make this our prayer, to develop this vision, allowing it to guide our actions and our relationships, our communities. And the more that we can internalize and share this wisdom, the more that we'll experience a shift, and not only in our own hearts, but in the world around us. We could take any of those examples, the song, the song I told you about, or the man with the lunchbox, or to just try to spread the spark of love, and that's how those sparks ignite into wildfire, and that's what the spiritual vision is. Does anybody want to share any final thing before we end for the day?
I'll share a little something. I'll try not to take too long. I just want to say this class was so beautiful. It's like everybody sharing and opening up their heart and telling about their own experience was really, really nice. Especially what you shared, Stacy, about your own envy and how you recognize it within yourself. And that's what Krishna consciousness is, right? It makes us look at our own selves. Like, it's so easy to recognize envy and jealousy and hatred in others. But when we can really look at ourselves, like, okay, well, where am I still holding on to these qualities? And I love how you brought it up in the ninth canto. My understanding from listening to lectures and things too is this envy. It's the whole reason we have a material body, right? like we were envious of Krishna. We left the spiritual world, and Krishna said, okay, you have free range to have the material world to do whatever you want with, right? And that's why we're here, is because we were envious. And so, of course, every single one of us has it. It's just a matter of looking, where am I still holding on to this comparison, this hatred, this jealousy, this envy? And really looking at ourselves, like, where can I let go of these thoughts and these ideas? And where can I ask Krishna, please help me remove these anarthas from my heart? Please help me remove this hatred, this envy, this comparison from my heart. And that's what spiritual, that's what brings us back to that spiritual vision, is letting go of comparison, judgment, envy. Because in the spiritual world, that's what it is. That doesn't exist. It only exists here in the material. And as we clear that away more and more, that's when we get more spiritual. And so I just wanted to share that, because it really is like, it's like the crux of material versus spiritual. It's like, that is the line, is envy. And at least that's been my understanding, especially coming back into Krishna consciousness. That was really like being shown to me through what I was reading, different things. I don't have like exact quotes or anything, but yeah, so the more we can look at ourselves and just be like, oh, wow, yeah, why am I feeling upset with this person? Oh, is it envy? Is it like just seeing the hypocrisy? Okay, how can I see it with more of an equal vision? But anyways, and then also, Radha, I love how you brought up that it isn't just that, we treat everyone exactly the same, but how we have to still deal with people where they're at. Just because we may want to see them and give them love, we still have to learn these boundaries, and that's the beauty of spirituality, is learning that balance. At least that's what I've been going through, is learning that balance of like, yeah, I love and I care about everybody, but just because I love and care about, or I believe I love and care about everybody, doesn't mean that I have to give every single person the same love and care. There's a difference in dealing with people according to where they're at, and the relationship that we have with them or can develop with them. And that's a tricky one. That one is a tricky one, especially I think as spiritualists, because we naturally have these bigger, more compassionate hearts, and we want to be kind and caring, but we have to learn to find that balance. And that's one of the things I've learned also. Some of the most compassionate people have the strictest boundaries, because they know what they know their limit, that, you know, they know themselves enough and they know when to draw those boundaries properly. So yeah, I just had those ideas coming. I think there was more, but I'll just keep it there for now. Thank you for such a beautiful class.
So nice. Thank you, Mariah. Thank you, Mariah.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything before we end for the day?
I liked your sandwich giving idea.
I think we're going to do it today. We're going to do
Okay.
it today. So,
And I have
good to know.
invited a few college students. You know, they have come from India and they are struggling, and somebody from other country too. So I go bring food for them because they're working so many hours and they don't have the time. So and then they look so stressed. So I said, you know, we should do a Gita class with all of you. So they are coming next Wednesday, and we are having a Gita class, and I'll put this lecture on.
Oh, wonderful. That's
Would be nice.
that's beautiful. It's exactly it. Sharing this love and compassion. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kalpana.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And I'll see you. What did they say? I'll see you Monday.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
You